Welcome everyone to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host Scotty McCoy, and boy do I have a surprise for all of you. I have on Zoom with me right now Jack Sholder, and he is the director of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddys Revenge. Hey Jack, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good hanging in there. So I have a couple of questions for you. The first one I have is how did you get your start into directing and filmmaking?
Uh, okay. Well, I started making films in college.
Okay.
I, I spent a year at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland,
Okay.
and I wanted to be a writer. And I had a girlfriend who was interested in film, and I got interested in film, and I thought, well, this would be hey, I should become a film director. Like why not, right? So
Right.
I started watching a lot of films. I got more and more into it. I went back to my college, Antioch College in Ohio. At that time, nobody had film programs.
Right.
It's not like now. There was NYU and USC and UCLA, but there were very few. I mean, there weren't even like film studies. It was like a whole new thing that really came in kind of in the 70s. Film really
Right.
started to be recognized. So I just started making films on my own. Um,
Mhm.
you know, I had a friend who had spent a year abroad at the
Mhm.
London School of Film Technique, so he knew how to operate a Bolex, and so we went out and we made a little film. Actually I got a job, a co-op job for 3 months working for the National Institutes of Health
Mhm.
for an anthropologist who was well, it's kind of a long story, but there was a guy who was investigating diseases of the central nervous system, and there was a
Okay.
disease called Kuru,
Oh.
and Kuru only affected one tribe in the eastern highlands of New Guinea and nobody else in the world. And he thought if he studied this, that he might be able to find the answer to
Mhm.
like muscular dystrophy, MS, a lot of those
Mhm.
diseases. And so the people that had this were basically Stone Age tribe, and uh, so he was smart enough to realize that after a few years they were all going to be listening to Michael Jackson. So
Right.
he hired an anthropologist to document them, and the anthropologist had this idea that everything should be uh, recorded so that um, there was no point of view that he
Mhm.
uh, added. And so I got a job working for this guy, and
Mhm.
and basically I was given a choice of editing several footage based on several different subjects. And so the first film I edited was called Nutrition in the 4A Tribe of the Eastern Highlands of New Guinea. I'm sure you've seen it. It's a perennial favorite.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody loves it.
Yes. I actually enjoy. I think we might have watched that in school actually.
Yeah. Well, it was basically just I went through and every shot of anything that had anything to do with food, I just
Mhm.
put a little title card in front of it that said, uh, July 21st, 19 whatever,
Right.
3:30 p.m. eating a embocaba beetle, whatever. So so um, I learned editing. I mean, it wasn't creative editing, but I learned the tools. I learned what you do in the film lab and how that all works.
Right.
So then I went back and I made a short film, and then I ended up making three other films, just completely on my own. I mean, there was
Nice.
nobody to tell us how to do it. I had no idea what I was doing. I watched a lot of movies,
Mhm.
and I just kind of did it. We figured out how to work the equipment, and that
Mhm.
was it. And
Nice.
then I moved to New York. So I had made these 1, 2, 3 short films, and then when I graduated from college, I got a summer job uh, working with high school students to make films about the Philadelphia art museums. They come from Philadelphia, and we had some film left over, and so I decided to make a movie, and I used the students as my crew, and we made another little movie, which is probably the first one I made that was any good, called Diary. And then I moved to New York, got some work as a film editor, and so I became a film editor. And then I started I made a couple of short films, which won a bunch of awards, played on television, stuff like that. And I had the good fortune to meet, soon after I moved to New York, to meet Bob Shea, who had this little film distribution company called New Line Cinema. And they had 4 films that they were distributing, and they needed a trailer. And Bob asked if I knew anybody who could edit a trailer, and I said, me. I mean, I'd never edited one, but I said, me. And he said, okay. And so we locked ourselves in an editing room over a weekend, and we edited this trailer. And by the end of the weekend, we were friends. And so, I guess I was 22 at that time. And then when I was 35, I made my first feature for New Line. So,
nice. So,
it was just, that's how it worked out.
Awesome. So you said that, I'm assuming that it was the first feature for New Line that was the Nightmare 2?
No, it was called Alone in the Dark.
Okay.
It was actually the first feature that they had produced on their own. Okay. They had co-produced another film called Stuntmen.
Okay.
Or Stunts. It was called Stunts.
Okay.
But this was the one that they basically produced all on their own. And then the next film that they did was Elm Street.
Nice. So how did you get involved with doing Nightmare on Elm Street 2?
Wes was supposed to direct it. He never liked the script, which he didn't write. And I think he had other options. And 6 weeks before they were going to start shooting, he pulled out. And so, I had helped a little bit out on the editing, not much, but I'd read early drafts of the script, because I'd always been kind of involved with New Line, and Bob always would sort of ask for my opinions and stuff. So I was pretty familiar with it, and they needed somebody who could just jump in and do it. And they didn't want to spend a lot of money, and I was, I guess, a proven entity. So they asked me to do it. And actually, my first reaction was no, because I didn't want to do another horror film. I didn't want to get typecast as a horror film director, and I didn't want to do a sequel to somebody else's horror film.
Right.
And then a friend of mine said, "Don't be an idiot. The film's going to make a lot of money, and you'll have a directing career." So I thought about it. I said, "Well, better to make it than not to." And the film came out. It made a lot of money, and I directed films for the next 20-some years. So he was right.
Yeah, and this film, like this film and franchise in general, like it has a massive cult following. Like it really has a loyal fan base.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So what was the hardest part about filming and completing A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddys Revenge?
Shooting and completing it. I mean, basically they'd already started. They'd hired, or they had a producer, they had a production designer, they had a director of photography. They'd already hired a bunch of people, and I sort of came in, and I had like 6 weeks to prepare this whole film, and it was extremely daunting. There were a lot of special effects, most of which I had no idea how to do. They had, people. I mean, the fact is that. On one level, to direct a film, you don't have to know everything about film, everything about acting, camera, sound, production design, all that stuff. Editing, of course. On another level, you don't have to know anything. Any idiot could direct a movie, because basically there's somebody there who knows how to do everything. If you're an auto mechanic and somebody brings their car in and says, the engine's making a funny sound, you know, and you have to replace the a piston.
Right.
It takes some skill.
Mm-hmm.
But if you owned the shop and you said, "Hey, Joe, go replace the piston," you really wouldn't have to know how to replace the piston. It would be a good idea if you did.
Yes.
But so it was very, very anxiety producing to prep the film, because I felt like it was like climbing Mount Everest. That there were like 190 special effects, and there were all these stunts, and there were all of these things that I really had no idea how to do.
Right.
And I had to figure out just how to shoot the movie. What all the shots were going to be and all that. So I just spent day and night prepping and figuring everything out, and then on the first day of shooting, I suddenly had no anxiety whatsoever.
Right.
It was kind of like stage fright, but I walked on and I kind of knew what I was about to do. So that made it
awesome.
easy.
So kind of similarly, what was the best part about film directing A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddys Revenge, and what was the worst?
Well, the best part was, it was a really great group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Good cast. Robert Englund was terrific to work with. Mark Patton. Everybody was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I had Jack Sholder, the cameraman who had shot the first one, who was a guy who I'd wanted to actually hire to do Alone in the Dark, but he wasn't available. So he really knew kind of how to do everything. So he was a great person to have. Once I got started and I felt like I knew what I was doing, it was just fun to make. I guess the hard part was a lot of night shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Long, hard shoot.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. So obviously I have to ask this question. Were you aware of the homoerotic elements that was written in the film? Like, were you aware of any of that while shooting it?
Well, it depends on what you mean by aware. If you mean, the current writing and thinking about the film as a sort of iconic gay horror film, no. None of us did.
Right.
Nobody New Line did. The fact that Mark Patton was gay it never even crossed my mind.
Right.
It wasn't like I said, "Oh, he's not gay." It wasn't even, it's like I'm looking at you and I'm not saying, is Scotty McCoy gay or not? I wonder if I'm just not even thinking about it. And all the girls at New Line thought Mark was really cute, and Mark was he was told by his agent, if you let people know that you're gay, it's going to ruin your career. So, Mark didn't even pick it up when he read the script, then he got into the makeup chair and some of the people said, "Hey, do you realize what this script is all about?" But so obviously there were a lot of gay things in the movie.
Right.
I lived in the West Village in New York, which was, the gay part of New York. So I kind of, I knew what it was all about, just to, superficially see it on the street,
Right.
I saw the film. It's about, teen sexual anxiety. So, so if one of the things back in the day that people would say, hey, you're, what are you, gay, or you're a fag, or this or that, all of those kinds of things. That was a way to put people down and belittle them, and all of that, to say that you were, less than.
Right.
They were, and so the idea that he's bullied, that he's an outsider, he's a bit of a loner. All that figured in. There's a scene in a gay bar, and there's The coach gets dressed up in, leather and all that, which is, I mean, it's like, I would see people walking down the street, in the West Village dressed like that. So,
Right.
For me, I was kind of playing with that, spoofing
Mhm.
it a little bit.
Right.
I mean, like I said, the times have really changed.
Yes.
And when the
Yeah.
movie came out, the only review that pointed that out was, I mean, all the reviews came in, and they were basically pretty good. I mean,
Mhm.
especially for a sequel, they were,
Yeah.
pretty much pretty good. And it did great business. And then the Village Voice came out. The Village Voice came out on a Wednesday, and I get a call from Sarah Risher, who was the head of production at New Line, and said,
Mhm.
"Did you see The Village Voice?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You're not going to believe this. They called it the gayest horror film ever made," or something like that. And we started laughing, and she read me the article and was saying, "Oh man, yeah, sure." But they were the only people that really picked up on it. And
Yeah.
then, of course, as time went on, it sort of
Yep.
became the predominant view, and
Mhm.
it was always considered. I mean, Wes sort of felt that the reason he didn't like the script was he felt it violated the rules because
Right.
Freddie appears at the pool party when
Yeah.
everybody's awake, and he's only supposed to appear when you're asleep.
Mhm.
But um, that whole concept sort of started to really come about, and also the film was kind of a one-off. I mean, you know I've always tried to think of myself as a kind of an auteur filmmaker, whether I am or not. So if you're making a sequel, it's pretty hard to be an auteur because
Right.
you're basically trying to make another version of
Right.
the same thing. But
Yeah.
I never felt that I had to be loyal to the original idea, nor did anybody else.
Right.
As far as New Line was concerned, the first film made a lot of money because they thought it was scary
Mhm.
and it had a great concept. So that was all they cared about. They didn't even want to bring back Robert Englund because
Yeah.
his agent wanted more money. I had to, I said, I think he really got to bring him back, but
Yeah.
they didn't understand, how important Freddy was. If you
Right.
look at the original poster, there's no Freddy on the poster.
Right. Yeah.
There's just a claw,
Yeah.
and there's Mark and Kim, and there's just a claw, and there's like a raven in the. I'm looking at it right now. I mean, it says the man of your dreams is back, but there's like a raven, and
Yeah.
and it says starring Mark Patton, blah blah blah, and Robert Englund as Freddy.
Right.
Uh,
Yep.
so so they didn't really feel like that there was anything
Mhm.
that had to be preserved or honored or anything like that, and
Right.
so that was just kind of how we
Mhm.
approached it, was just to sort of take it on its own terms. So
Yeah.
people have always felt it was kind of like an outlier because
Mhm.
with three they sort of went back to more toward Wes's concept, except Freddie
Mhm.
sort of became a stand-up comedian.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you think about it, even like Freddy Krueger, because it was like the first two were, the first, obviously the first two of the franchise. So it's not like they had a franchise at the time.
Yeah,
So like Freddy didn't really start becoming popular until he became that comedian in part three. And
yeah.
as the movies went on, but I think part two Freddy is the most scariest Freddy, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, that was the only thing that New Line said to me. I mean, they didn't say you have to do this, you have to do that. They
Mhm.
they didn't hover over me at all.
Mhm.
Um, the only thing they said was, you got to keep Freddie dark. We
Yep.
want to keep him dark.
Yep.
Both in the lighting sense, I think, and also in the actual sense of making him
Right.
a dark character.
Yep, exactly. So, let's see. So, were there any talks that you were aware about of bringing Heather Langenkamp back for the film?
No.
None. All right.
Well, I mean, there might have been before I came on.
Right.
I mean, when I came on, there was no cast whatsoever, including Freddy.
Okay.
The interesting thing is, when I came on, I was, I said, "Are you bringing Robert Englund back?" And they said, "Well, his agent's asking for more money, and we don't want to give him more money. So, we think he's trying to take advantage of us." I mean, that was their attitude. And and like I said, I told them I think he's really good. I think you really need to bring him back. The interesting thing is that we never saw anybody else for Freddy.
Right.
So you would have thought that they would have been concerned, or at that time, you never had a killer in those early '80s movies who was a real character. They were just, a guy would pop up, and kill a bunch of campers, or show up at your doorstep with a chainsaw and a mask on, and it could be anybody. You didn't need an actor. You just needed somebody who could hold a chainsaw or do this. A lot of them, they were stuntmen.
Yeah, that's what I was actually thinking. I was gonna say the same thing. Like with the Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers, they don't talk. They're not they're characters, but they don't have a character background or like that personality. Like you can put anybody in a hockey mask or the William Shatner mask and put the overalls or whatever the clothes are on them, and you can have a stuntman do it, and bam, you got your character. But with Robert Englund, he's Freddy. He talks. He's alive.
Well, and actually. I mean, what I think is that they were planning to hire him back all along, but they were just trying to sort of play hardball. And so about 2 weeks before we were going to start shooting, and like I said, we never saw anybody else for the role. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks before we were going to start shooting, they said, "Oh, we made a deal with Robert, so he's going to play Freddy." Nice. I said, "Well, that's great." They said, but the problem is that in the meantime, he took another job, so he's not available the first week. So you're going to have to use a double for Freddy.
Wow.
So fortunately, the only scene that we were shooting was the scene in the shower, and there was just one shot. Really of Freddy, where at the end of the scene he walks out of the shower, and so they thought, well, we'll just get an extra. People say, oh well, he was a stuntman. He wasn't even a stuntman. He was an extra. He could have been you. He was like some guy who fit the costume basically. Nice. He had no particular skills.
Yeah,
and I had met Robert by coincidence. I had gone to a theater production, I don't know, 2 weeks before we started shooting. I don't know why. I think Lynn Shay knew somebody in the cast and invited me to come. And he happened to be there at the show. And so I saw him, and then during the 15-minute intermission, he and I just talked like crazy for 15 minutes, and then that was it. So when the extra started walking, he was walking, like he was Dracula, like he was Frankenstein or something, and I had to say, stop acting like a monster.
Right.
And I finally got him. I mean, he, if you watch the movie, you can tell he's not Robert Englund. He just doesn't. Right. And then the following week, then we really started shooting stuff that had Freddy in it. And Robert was just, I mean, he just had this power and this, even though he's not a big, powerful looking guy. He's not a guy who, you'd want to get, having in a tough bar with you. He doesn't look like he could really kick ass, but he's got this, he's a terrific actor, and he had this real power and energy, and just the way he moved and the way he walked and everything, there was just this strength to it.
Awesome. So did you see the first Nightmare on Elm Street before filming, directing the second one?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, like I said, Bob has showed me an early draft when they were just getting ready to greenlight the film. and then I saw something that was probably closer to the shooting script, and then I helped out a little bit on the editing, and so
Okay.
I had seen it, in a partially finished state, and then I'd seen it in a finished state. So I was pretty familiar with the film.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So, do you like have any type of memorable stories from your time on set of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 that you would like to share?
Uh, Quite a few. Well, everybody's probably heard the story about the scene with the tongue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's hear that one again.
Well, when we were shooting at the final stuff, which we shot in this abandoned steel mill,
Yeah.
and there was some, I don't know, some special effect, and special effects people, we were ready to shoot, and they weren't quite ready, and so we had to stand around for like 2 hours doing nothing,
Right.
while they got their shit together. You're on a, you really don't want to be standing around doing nothing on a film set. So I was pretty annoyed, and I said to them, okay, the next time you have a special effect, I want you to be waiting for me, not the other way around.
Right.
I want you to have it ready, so there's no possibility that I'm going to wait. So, and that happened to be the tongue gag. So, so they got it ready like 2 hours before it was scheduled to happen, and we were running late, and so they had to glue this big green tongue. It was like about this long, with warts on it, and it moved all around. They had all these controls that it could kind of move up and down and sideways, and the assistant director said to me, Mark's had this thing in his face now for like 3 or 4 hours. He can't eat. It's hard to swallow. He can't talk. He's really upset. And I think it would be a good idea if you, during a little break in the action, if you were to go to his trailer and just talk to him and, calm him down and all that. So I said, okay. And I knocked on his door, and, I guess the makeup men were there, and they opened up the door, and I take a look at Mark, and he's standing there with this like 9-inch green tongue sticking out of his mouth, and I burst out laughing. Mark he couldn't talk, but he had like a pad and a marker, and he wrote, "It's not funny." And I apologized, and I left quickly. So when it came time to shoot the scene, it was we'd been shooting like for 12 or 14 hours, and I was kind of punchy at that point. And I knew that if I saw him again, I'd probably burst out laughing again. And if I did that, he might just like pull the thing out of his mouth, and that would be the end of it. So I hid behind the set, and I watched it through a door, and I had the assistant director say action and cut, because I was afraid if I even like said something, I'd just start laughing. So that was how I directed that.
That's funny. That poor guy though, like he had that scene, and then he had the scene where he was dancing to that song and doing the butt bump and all that. Oh my God.
Well, that was all his stuff. He made that all up.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I just said, it said in the script, he dances to this song, and I just said, hey, Mark, go, make something up, go for it. I'm not a choreographer, so
right.
So he had done that. I mean, there was all this, the other special effects where, Freddy bursts out of his chest, and special effects. I mean, Robert had it pretty hard. He had, 3-4 hours of makeup every day, so he'd have to get there early, and then toward the end, putting this latex on and gluing it on his face for 12 hours, and then pulling it off and having to put it back. So toward the end of the shooting, his face was like hamburger.
Oh my God.
And think they used. I have no recollection that they used any contacts.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did Wishmaster, they used contacts for that film, and they're not like regular contacts that you wear. They're harder, and I remember, toward the end of the shoot, Andrew Divoff was like putting sandpaper in his eyes. It was just terrible, Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
So, the last question I got for you is: do you have any future projects that you have in the works that you'd like to promote to the listening and viewing audiences, and any social media or accounts or websites that you'd like to promote?
Well, I'm actually I was supposed to go into production on a vampire movie that I helped to write, that I'm extremely enthusiastic about.
Nice.
And things got a little postponed, and so at this point, there's a possibility we might shoot it in the winter. More likely, we would shoot it in the spring.
Nice.
But it's a really, really good film, and I haven't shot a film, and I guess the last film that I did was in 2004.
Oh, so, wow. Okay.
Because I left LA to start a film program at a university in North Carolina.
Okay.
And so I did that for about 13 or 14 years, and
nice.
So I am hoping to be making this film.
Nice. And what's the name of the film, if you're able to tell us?
Fear the Night.
Nice. I'll definitely be looking out for that. I love vampire stories, so definitely can't wait to see that.
It's a really good one. It's like really good vampire movies are about more than just vampires.
Right.
So, which is certainly what this one is. It deals with a lot of stuff, but
nice.
Young female vampires. Young female vampire. So
awesome. Yeah. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Jack, for joining me.
Okay.
All right.
Been a pleasure.
Yep.
All right. Take care.
Right. You too. You have a great rest of your day.
Same to you. And sorry about your father.
Thank you very much. Bye.